Good evening, everyone. This is the Two-Way Tonight program on the Two-Way platform, and I'm Mark Halperin, your host. Crazy day for me, for a variety of reasons I won't burden you with. Crazy day in the news business. There's a lot of little stories. I would say not. It's not. There's no new pope, for instance, today. Just to give you a sense of the scale of the news. And in fact, one of the most interesting things that we're going to talk about tonight is day two of the Biden interview on The View, because the reaction has been quite interesting. We have two people here with us whose understanding of how to talk about the reaction is, I would say, second to none. So they'll be here with us in just a moment. Batya Ungar-Sargon's here. Michael LaRosa will be here, or is here, and they'll be in here in just a minute. And we're going to talk about the Biden interview because it's still reverberating across America. Little bit of news. The president talked today about tariffs. We'll play that for you. The mayor of Newark, New Jersey was arrested, and people are making a big deal about that. I don't quite get it. John Fetterman, questions about him. We said in the morning meeting this morning that none of us think he's going to be in office for very long. And it's one of these very complicated stories where people in the press know more than they can say, and I'm guilty of that too. I'm in that same camp. We hear things that either our sources won't authorize us to say, and or we're not sure that we don't feel they're sufficiently confirmed. In some cases, maybe they'd be uncomfortable to report. I'm not saying that's true in this case, but it's this great question for us, that sometimes civilians, non-journalists, maybe say, well, that's ridiculous. Like, let's say somebody told me John Fetterman had stolen 100 pigs from a farm in Pittsburgh, but they said, it's off the record. You can't report that he stole 100 pigs. And they said, here's some photos of him stealing the pigs, but you can't use these. These are off the record. There are people who aren't journalists who'd say, well, we're obligated to report that because he's a public official and he stole 100 pigs and it's documented. But if the source says it's off the record, then you can't report it. You say, well, you're being more loyal to one person than you are to all the people of Pennsylvania who deserve to know that their senator stole 100 pigs. Again, this is a hypothetical. As far as I know, he didn't steal any pigs. So I can just tell you, I'm trying to be as transparent as I can without violating any professional rules. Reporters know more about John Fetterman and what's going on in his life now than I've seen reported anywhere. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a couple things that happened at the White House briefing, reconciliation, the oft scrutinized Rubio-Witkoff relationship, and there's an incredible war between. It's so fascinating. I wish I had followed it more closely, but there's an incredible war between uh, what's his name? What's Casey Means' brother's name?
Callie.
Callie. Callie Means, who's been on this program, and I'm sorry, I'm just bad at remembering names. Callie Means is so if Laura Loomer comes after you or a loved one, the reaction of most people is lay low, hope no one notices, stay out of the way. But Callie's reaction has been to just go right back at her. And I don't know how much, I don't know. I'm going to ask our guests if they've been tracking that too, but just an incredible thing because Twitter is not real life. And I've not seen any press coverage of this, but I follow them both on Twitter, and it's so interesting. Callie Means a relatively mild-mannered guy. He's not a weak person, but he's not someone who I would have thought would necessarily, particularly because he's a special government employee, I would not have thought necessarily that he would decide that the way to deal with his sister being attacked by Laura Loomer was to go right back at Laura Loomer. Very compelling to me, just as a human. It's not going to be of concern to too many people. All right. Let's start talking about all this. As always, if you want to get in on the conversation and you're here on the two-way platform, like Mr. Peter Cloth. Peter, no, that's not Cloth. That's an I. Siath. Is that how you pronounce your name, Peter? Siath? Maybe. Well, no, it's not. Maybe. No, I don't know. That's what it looks like. Anyway, if you're here on the two-way platform like Peter C, and you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. If you're watching on YouTube or X, don't raise your hand. Don't put smack in the chat. I have to say, I don't know John Fetterman. I've met him once, but I feel bad for him and his family. This is a very hard situation. I extend the presumption of grace to him, and I feel nothing but peace, love, and understanding towards him personally. But there's a very difficult professional situation for him, less difficult for reporters, but there is a degree of difficulty there as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, one of the two-way community's favorite people. I say that to all the guests, but tonight I mean it. No, tonight I mean it. Batya, welcome back. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Mark. You do say it to all the guests. I know because I watch this show every morning and every night, but I
But
still
here's
believe you when you
but
say it to
here's
me.
but here's why it's true. We only book people we like. Michael Aristo, I was like, I've said this, I think, on this platform before about. Have you guys heard what I say about Dick Durbin?
Yes.
When I had my Bloomberg show, the bookers would say, "Well, how about we get Dick Durbin?" I would say, "No, I'll never book him. Nice man, very influential, foreign guest." So Lori Blackford, my colleague, and I, we just have a philosophy. We only book people we're interested in. So by definition, all of our guests are our favorite guests because we've chosen to have you here. Michael, welcome in. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Uh, I'm going to start with the Bidens because Batya and I talked about it yesterday, and Michael has been on social today about it. And Michael worked for Joe Biden and has been brave and stalwart in speaking out. Uh, this is one of the questions that I've been raising about the Democratic Party, which is, can they have an honest conversation? Why did Bobby Kennedy leave the Democratic Party? Honest conversation. Why did the Democratic Party choose to cover up Joe Biden's mental decline? Honest conversation. Why did Kamala Harris lose? Honest conversation. Why have young people gravitated towards MAGA? Honest conversation. Some of these people say are backward looking. Who cares for the future of the Democratic Party? Why the Democrats covered up Joe Biden's cognitive decline? He's not going to run again. What does it matter? Chances are they won't have a nominee in 2028 who has cognitive decline. The answer, which I know Batya and Michael know, is, and most of you know, is credibility and the ability to grapple with how a party could do such a thing when 75% of the voters said the guy's too old to be president, and the Bidens didn't even have a conversation about it, as best we can tell. So let's first play for you the soundbite of Jill Biden that's gotten so much attention from The View yesterday. This number 17, please. Talking about whether she was involved in keeping Joe Biden sequestered away from scrutiny.
You are your husband's fiercest advocate and a close advisor, and it's been reported that you created a sort of cocoon around him and kind of limited his interactions with the media and others. Do you think you could have been too close to the situation to objectively gauge whether he could handle a full 4 more years?
I was with Joe day and night. I saw him more than any other person. I woke up with him. I went to bed at night with him. So I saw him all throughout the day, and I did not create a cocoon around him. I mean, you saw him in the Oval Office. You saw him making speeches. He wasn't hiding somewhere. I didn't have him, sequestered in some place. I mean, that's
Wish she had.
Was that hurtful to you when they were describing you as Lady Macbeth and all
Yes,
of those?
it was very hurtful. It was very hurtful, especially from some of our so-called friends.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I had been on the set of The View, and I have to say, people say it was a softball interview, they asked tougher questions than they might have. But if I'd been there and I'd been asked to ask a follow-up, these are the two things I would have followed up with. First, I would have said, I'm going to tell you how many interviews he did and how many press conferences he had, and then I'm going to ask you, if you weren't cocooning him, who was? Because he didn't have a normal number of press conferences. And then I would have said, Joe Biden, your husband, at one point in his presidency, was at an event commemorating the death of a congresswoman from Indiana, and he spoke to her at the event. He tried to talk to her at the event. Just describe what was going on then. Was that not a sign of cognitive decline? Because that's not saying Iraq when you mean Iran, or saying you met with a European leader who was dead years ago. That is literally, he's at an event commemorating someone's death, and he tries to speak to her. So the reaction to that clip, as I said, I've been hearing from people all day, but amongst the most piquant and important reactions, first, our friend Selena Zito, great reporter who's covered the Bidens, as I have, for a long time. Number 12 said this on social media, on the X platform. You're going to have to make that way bigger for me to read it. Biden's visit yesterday with Jill on The View, here we go, where Jill denies putting a bubble around Joe by explaining how she put a bubble around him, and his uncomfortable incoherence tells me they do not have any idea how to navigate about what is going to drop in the Tapper Thompson book. Jake Tapper and Thompson, what's his first name?
Alex.
Alex, thank you, Blanky again. They've written a book's coming out soon. It's purportedly not about the press's role in the cover-up, but about the Democrats' role in the cover-up. And Michael tweeted this in response to Selena. Here's Michael's tweet. Here we go. I love my former boss, Dr. Biden, very much. Unlike maybe the Fetterman staff. My heart breaks for how clearly frustrated she is. I know how badly she wants to rescue his reputation for history. After all, this was their life. Sadly, I agree with Selena's assessment. Their team has always struggled with being 10 steps behind modern, authentic, and strategic communication strategy, or simply reading, absorbing public sentiment accurately enough for the Bidens to be effective at public communication and media relations. Michael, again, you're such a valuable voice in trying to set this right for history and for the Democratic Party, because you're brilliant. You've been in government. You've been a journalist, and you understand the whole thing as sophistication, but you're also honest about it. So talk about how you experience the View appearance and what you've been thinking and hearing from others today about how people who do care about the Bidens are reacting to the appearance.
She jumped in and answered that question for him, which was something she was doing more and more frequently in the White House. I think even once during the 2020 campaign, she kind of pulled him away from the pool. We would go up the steps to the plane in Newcastle, the pool would be waiting there. And she did that a couple times at the White House when we would go out to the South Lawn, and she'd kind of pull his arm and lead him away. There is an instinctive protective nature. She clearly knew he was not answering or satisfying that question. And she clearly had something she wanted to say about the authors, which she didn't really say. But the cocooning part, did she create the cocoon? No, she didn't create the cocoon. Over time, the cocoon, I think, was more responsive to her. Or one of the big things I think was important that's sort of overlooked, Jill Biden's chief of staff or body person, scheduler, now chief of staff for the last 15 years, who has been by her side, who helps her with her books interviews, Anthony Bernal, along with Annie Tomasini, the president's traveling chief of staff, both who are with the Bidens now. Good people with good hearts, and I'm sure good intentions. They controlled the cocoon around the president. They controlled access. They were very rigid about access, the manifests for trips, who and how much time.
Michael, let me stop you for just 1 second, because you're saying something I want to highlight. Okay, but thank you. You're doing amazing.
Okay.
Name the two people again. Just say their names again.
Annie Tomasini and Anthony Bernal.
Okay, so I've not read the Jake Tapper. Tell me that guy's name again.
Neither have I.
Alex Thompson.
Alex Thompson. Thank you. I keep thinking Jake Thompson, who used to be a reporter for the Kansas City Star. I've not read it, but I could virtually guarantee you that those two will be named in the book as the leaders of the cover-up. I can guarantee. I can guarantee you. I can guarantee.
I have no idea, but look, to be in the traveling bubble with the Bidens was a very big deal, and I was honored and privileged that they trusted me enough to bring me in from the very beginning, and I loved every minute of it. I loved Anthony and Annie like family. But look, the truth is, it was often they did him a disservice, whether they were micromanaging how to put him on the plane. I texted Annie the night that they left for Israel right after the October 7th massacre, when he went to Israel, and said the next picture of him for the next 12 hours as you're traveling with all the B-roll coverage is going to be him trying to salute, but he can't because you're putting him through the belly of the plane. Those were the kind of micromanaging decisions. And he looked ridiculous going up into the belly of the plane where you couldn't see his face and he'd just have to walk up more steps. So those were some of the things that there's plenty of examples of those. But look, Annie and Anthony were with them all through COVID. We all lived together in Wilmington for the last few months of the 2020 campaign. We were all in the traveling bubble from day one of the inauguration on. And look, let's take simple other places like the Office of Legislative Affairs. There were times when the Office of Legislative Affairs, trying to do their job, trying to get member of Congress time with the president, or even signing pens, a signing pen from the president, and they couldn't, and they refused, and they couldn't get them. There was simple things like that access was controlled.
Yeah.
And
So
limited by.
you've named the two people who I say with great confidence, having not read the book, those two people are going to be named essential to the cover-up. I'm quite certain.
They were also in Rehoboth for the last final week. It was just them who were allowed.
Yeah. So Batya,
according to Katie Rogers reported.
Yep. Batya, I don't want you to go beyond what you're comfortable saying or reporting, but who else do you think will be labeled by that book, where they've done a lot of reporting? And although Jay Tapper has no history of highlighting this issue before the election, Alex does. Who else do you think will be part of the cover-up?
Not the people who I think are most morally culpable, which is the media. So to me, like, the people in the president's inner circle, that was their job, was to protect his dignity. That was Jill Biden's job. Like, that's what you would want and expect of family members and people who had been with them. And then, like, the people, I actually believe Elizabeth Warren when she says, like, what limited interactions she had, there was nothing there that alarmed her.
I got to stop you in that, because we're having a conversation. I'm not interrupting you. We're having a conversation. Elizabeth Warren saw that event where Joe Biden spoke to a dead congresswoman. So I just can't let those people off the hook. First of all, I'm starting to unfurl my reporting on this, which I've been saving for other reasons, but this book's coming out, so I'm getting ahead of it. Many members of Congress talked amongst themselves and said, "Hey, Joe Biden's been my friend for 30 years, 40 years. They won't let me on the phone with him anymore." Or I was on the phone with Joe Biden and he yelled at me, and it totally uncalled for, yelled at me, and now they say I can't talk to him anymore. Okay, and many of them said, "Look at that event. Look at him talking to a dead congresswoman." So I just don't think, believe me, you and I agree about the culpability of the media on this, even though apparently the book doesn't address it in any depth. I just can't let those Democrats off the hook when there was a congressman from Minnesota who had the nerve to go out in public and say, "Guys, the emperor has no clothes. We can all see the mental decline." So if I were interviewing Elizabeth Warren, I'd say, "Do you remember when he talked to a dead congresswoman? How can you say I never saw it? You did see it. You're not telling the truth. You saw it. You saw it in public."
I think the reason that I am less obsessed with this is because I cannot think of a single policy that would have been handled differently if this wasn't happening.
Oh, I can tell you different. I can tell you a thing that would have been handled differently. He wouldn't have run for re-election. There would have been a real prominent nomination fight.
That's not a policy, Mark. That's a
here's the policy.
of,
Here's the policy. All the policies that Donald Trump is implementing now because he's president. Those are the policies.
That you're agreeing with me. I am saying the problem here is that the Democrats have no agenda. They have nothing to offer the American people.
But I can't agree with you on that. Build back better was an agenda.
Okay, you're not disagreeing with me, Mark. If Kamala Harris had been running from the beginning of this election cycle and he had never run, it's not like the policy or the agenda would have been different in any significant
I don't think you say that, because had he gotten out of the race if he'd gotten out of the race right after the midterms, Michael Bennet might have been the nominee with a whole agenda. You don't know who the nominee would have been, but they would have had a debate. One thing that nomination fights do,
I can tell you that I know that they wouldn't have, because I can tell you what they have right now when the opportunity of an unbelievably unpopular president. Okay.
Of course. But again, I can't prove I'm right, but you can't prove I'm wrong. the context in which
I'm trying to make an argument.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to finish just one sentence, Mark, and then you can completely dominate the rest of the. I won't say anything else.
No.
But
You go.
You look at how lost the Democrats are right now when they are convinced that their entire base hates every single thing that Donald Trump is doing. And they have absolutely failed to come up with a single policy to say, this is what we would be doing for you that is different. This is what we would be bringing to the table. Like these Congress people who went to that detention center in Elizabeth, New Jersey, to basically do performance art for social media. That's the Democratic Party right now. But that was true a year ago, and that was true 2 years ago. Like when Donald Trump comes out and raises taxes on the wealthy, which is something I think is going to end up happening, like the Democrats are then going to say, how dare you raise money on the wealthy? Don't you see that this is regressive? The only way to raise the fortunes of the working class is trickle-down economics. They have literally turned on every single one of their dearly held beliefs because Trump has embraced them. And that was true 4 years ago. So to me, like the elite reckoning it's significant because elites are overrepresented in the Democratic Party. So if you're an elite Democratic voter who feels upset that you were lied to, this matters. But if you're the average American, the kind of middle of the country person who the Democrats need to convince in order to win a single election in the future, I don't think this stuff matters that much.
Well, do you mean the reckoning over what actually happened doesn't matter?
Who knew what, when, like.
Right.
Yeah.
So here, okay. So we agree about the Democrats having no ideas. I don't think we agree from what you said that Harris almost won the election. I mean, she didn't lose the battleground states by very much. We disagree, I think, that had Biden gotten out earlier, there might have been a stronger nominee who would have beaten Donald Trump. That would have changed history.
Who do you think that could have been?
Michael Bennet, Josh Shapiro, Amy Klobuchar.
You think they could have beaten Donald Trump?
Yeah. Kamala Harris almost beat him.
On what agenda? Like on what set of policy proposals?
Go ahead, Michael.
So I just want to jump in. I don't think, I mean, like I don't disagree with either of you really in anything what you're saying. I think Democrats are knee-jerk opposition to Trump on things that we used to be for, like cutting government waste, fraud, and abuse, the way Bill Clinton did. But look, it was made very clear to me very early, and I don't know if this matters, Mark, or not, but like I think within a month, why wouldn't he run for re-election, Michael? Why wouldn't we run? This is an after the second term. This is an after the re-elect thing. There was never a doubt in their minds that he wasn't going to run again. And there was never going to be a primary. And the reason why I think I've always been, I came out when I left the White House supportive of him running again was because I knew he was. I knew they absolutely were. Chris Licht said to me after I did my first interview, he was like, you did a good job, but he's not really running again. I'm like, why do you think that? I've been like for 2 years, I knew I was under the impression we were running again. It was always going to be that way. There was never a chance he wasn't. And
Michael,
that was made clear to me very early in the first couple of weeks. And I was a little surprised. Sure. I was just happy to be there. Like I thought we would just do one term, but I was corrected very soon.
Did I interrupt you earlier, since I've been interrupting both of you, although I just considered, did I interrupt you earlier when you were talking about the bubble? Not just now, I mean earlier. Were you going to say more about the bubble towards the end of the presidency?
Well, I mean, I don't know what was going on in the bubble. I just was saying that, the reporting done by Katie Rogers and others was that it was Annie Tomasini, Anthony Bernal, the First Lady, who were there in Rehoboth that last weekend, and that Mike Donilon and Steve Ricchetti were nearby. I think the only other person I would say, because you brought up the lack of interviews, the First Lady wouldn't have had much to do with that. They did entrust one person and one person only controlled the public relations and anything outer facing. When Kristen or when they were asked to do NBC Meet the Press in 23 for Kristen Welker's inaugural show, there was one person who could say no to that. And it was the same person who made the decision, apparently, to not do an interview until 8 days later after the debate, and to not do the Super Bowl interview. It's the same person. And, he didn't do a Sunday show for a year into the first campaign, until after we lost Iowa. That was the first time he did a Sunday show interview. So they treated the press like a hazard the entire time.
Is that person the first lady or someone else?
No, it's not the first lady. I mean, you probably know who. The only person who controlled everything communications on both the political and official side of the Biden presidency was Anita Dunn.
Yeah.
It's one person only.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Either of you want to say anything more about this? I just want to make one more stab at explaining why I think it matters. It should matter. The credibility of the party. There's things like trans athletes in women's sports, or the open border, or not acknowledging what happened in the Afghanistan withdrawal. That I think in most cases, at least 70% of the country look at the Democrats and they say, "Come on, you want to be the governing party, and you're not telling the truth about the reality we can see with our own eyes." That to me is why this matters, because it's hard to say we're a credible party when you just sit there when someone has severe loss of capacity and pretend it's not happening.
I think the opposite. I think that's why it doesn't matter. If they had good immigration policy, good economic policy, good social policy, and good foreign policy, nobody would care about this. And it's because they have none of those things that this is what we're talking about.
Well,
I agree with that.
I mean, look, the first bill that came up under Trump was Lake and Riley. And what did Democrats do? We whipped against it. We voted against having outlawing girls or men in women's sports.
And they're having a reckoning on this instead of, this is my problem with it, I think. They're having the reckoning on the wrong thing. Like all the elites have decided, oh, the Joe Biden cover-up is what sank us. Like the Joe Biden cover-up was really gross. It was disgusting. It was elites basically protecting an elite and protecting their own reputations and then stabbing him in the back in this disgusting way when they got found out. But they're now people who did that are acting like, oh, if we can just sort of have the right conversation about that, then it won't matter that we have nothing to offer the American people. And I just think they have it exactly backwards.
I agree with the way you just framed it. All right, Michael, I don't know if you can stay with us. We're going to talk about tariffs. Are you able to stay with? Okay. So I just want to play the president talking today about tariffs. And then, Batya, I just want to get your a macro sense of where we are as we head into the weekend where the Treasury Secretary is meeting in Geneva with Chinese economic officials. So number one, please.
You are going to always have a baseline. I mean, there could be an exception at some point. We'll see. Somebody does something exceptional for us. That's always possible. But basically, you have a baseline of a minimum of 10%. And some of them will be much higher, 40%, 50%, 60%, as they've been doing to us over the years. We had a wonderful deal yesterday. We have 4 or 5 other deals coming immediately. We have many deals coming down the line. And ultimately, we're just signing the rest of them in. But we always have a baseline of 10%.
So, Batya, as we head into the weekend, just overall, where do you think it stands in terms of China and the other countries and the American economy?
I think he's in a really good position right now. I think if they didn't have this UK deal on the table, they would be going into the weekend with a lot less leverage. But basically what he did was we had Liberation Day where he imposed these sort of massive tariffs and the stock market basically crashed. The global elites went absolutely wild. Wall Street went apoplectic. And then he said, you know what, we'll just bring it down to 10%. And there was like this global sigh of relief at the idea of us generating billions and billions of revenue in tariffs. People were happy about that. And I urge everybody to go and watch the press conference. It got totally overshadowed by the Pope, but go watch the press conference in which the president announces the deal with the UK. Listen to Keir Starmer's voice as he sort of extols the brilliance of Donald Trump and talks so glowingly about a situation in which the UK now has a 10% tariff from the United States on it. Like, this is just art of the deal. And, first they said, this is going to be a tax on the American people. It'll never happen. They'll never get any deals. And then they started getting deals. And now, of course, they're saying, oh, this is not a good deal. We didn't need the deal. We had a surplus with the UK. Look at what's in the deal. This is a great deal for the United States. It's a great deal for so many of the sectors of our industry. And just like the fact that now these countries are like in this situation of gratitude to have deals that are so beneficial to the American people and the American worker, you just have to admire it. He really is pulling off things that I think if anyone was being honest, even if they hate him, should be able to acknowledge, like, this is really, really great stuff for the United States. And I just want to read this headline that I saw on CNN because I think this really speaks to a larger problem. The headline was Trump's first trade deal. Why is it in quotation marks? Okay. Trump's first trade deal doesn't bode well for the rest of the world. That tone of like that CNN is looking out for the rest of the world that now is going to be screwed over by the United States' good fortune. Like, this is why people love Trump. It's why they hate the Democrats, why they hate the Democratic elites. It's why they hate the media, because there is this feeling like everything that is subliminally in that headline of like, actually, like the mainstream media, it's obviously rooting for the rest of the world, obviously rooting for China. And it's not clear why they're not thrilled that we're getting all these wins, except that it's Donald Trump who's doing them.
Michael.
I don't disagree with what Batya's saying about CNN and rooting for his failure. I totally believe that the mainstream media is mostly doing that. I think from a Democrat's point, I try to be very objective about this, but was there a deal we could never strike with England before? They've been our closest ally. I think the reason why this deal with the UK is so cartoonish and kind of like a big eye roll for everybody on Wall Street is like, it's the UK, it's our number one ally. We didn't need a deal with the UK. I mean, it did not take Donald Trump to get us a trade deal with the UK, just like it did not take Donald Trump to get us minerals from Ukraine.
Except he's the only one who did it like that. But that's the thing that really bothers me.
Because we didn't need it. But Batya, I think the point is
you don't want $6 billion a year in tariffs from the UK. I want that. We have a huge deficit.
We didn't need a trade deal. We didn't need a trade deal.
How are you going to get that? How are you going to get that $6 billion?
They're allies. It's the same thing with Ukraine, with minerals. We could get minerals anytime we want from Ukraine if we needed them from Ukraine. We've been their ally since 1994. We were protecting them. These are what I'm saying is I don't think we should root for failure or minimize it, but at the same time, it's very low hanging fruit, extremely low hanging fruit.
But they didn't happen. Why wasn't it picked by previous presidents?
I mean, why didn't we put tariffs on Rolls Royces and Range Rovers? I don't know. Isn't that what?
Well.
But why would we leave $6 billion on the table that we could have to pay down our deficit? Like, why is that a good thing to?
Well, we don't need a trade deal with our number one longest ally to get what we need, I think is the point. We talk to them every day. I don't think that I think we're over dramatizing something that presidents do all the time with England. And they're talking to them all the time. There wasn't a trade deal because we already trade with them.
But they had a tariff on us and we didn't have a tariff on them. So we were giving them $5 billion and they were not giving us $6 billion. And now their tariffs on us are in half and we have a 10% tariff on them. So we're now making money. Like, why is that? I don't know what is like.
I don't think it's
This is a
bad.
cultural thing.
I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's going to make a dent in the economy or bring back manufacturing jobs that he's promising. Are we here to open up new markets, or are we here to or try to bring back American jobs? He said both things. So
both can be true. They both can be true.
If the UK is the new market, great.
All right. We've got a ton of hands up, so let's go to folks. And again, as always, tell us that we may get to some other topics, but tell us where you are after you unmute, Kelly, and what's on your mind. And thank you for joining.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Batya. Hi, Michael, I believe. So I have a quick comment kind of about the Biden's interview, and then a question more relating to Kelly and Casey. I guess like my first thought about the whole interview and everything is, I get, as an American who's not, a politician, I just want to know that I'm getting the truth from my elected officials, right? That goes for the president, the people working for the president, this whole thing. So to Batya's point, I kind of do think it matters, because if we're expected to put our trust in you as our elected officials, I don't care how small the cover up might be. I don't want to cover up. Kind of my first point. And then two, the fact that Jill Biden went on the interview with him, doesn't that kind of also speak a little bit about his mental state? And then just quickly, kind of my more important point, why is anyone fighting like Kelly and Casey Means? And as a mom of a young child, like, all I want is for him to be healthy, have access to healthy food. I don't get it. I don't know if this Laura Loomer, like what she's out for. So any input on that?
Great questions. Batya, if you could respond to the Biden stuff, and then also to the Callie and Casey Means, and then Michael.
I don't disagree with you. It's not great that it happened. I just don't. I think that people are acting like that is the way to, like, that is the problem that the Democrats have. And I don't think that's the problem that the Democrats have. I don't think it's good that it happened. I just personally, I'm just overwhelmed with pity for Biden, that he went through this public humiliation and was knifed in the back by people who like covered up for him when it was convenient for them, Obama and Clooney and et al. And then the minute it was not convenient for them, he ritually humiliated him on the public stage. Like, there's a part of me that can't get past that.
Yeah.
And I just, seeing this elderly person who, I don't like him, I don't think he was a great president, but seeing a person who devoted his life to public service be treated that way. So to me, it's like I understand why Jill was, first of all, wouldn't have noticed so much. You get used to, I don't know, anyone who's married, you sort of like tune out like the worst parts of your partner just to survive, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But also, like, to me, it's like I think like maybe that hurts my objectivity in judging this, but I just believe if they had a great platform, nobody would have cared. But it's not just that they have a bad platform, it's that the platform Joe Biden enacted of open borders and woke stuff and terrible economy and so forth, that is the Democrats. It's not just their brand, that is their agenda at this point. They cater to the elites. So to me, it's sort of like, I don't see how it would have been so different if not for it. But I don't want to condone the cover up. And I think the media just like completely lost all credibility, which is why we're all here on Two-Way, the best platform in America, why we all come back twice a day to watch these shows, because we know we're not going to be lied to. So I totally agree with you, Kelly.
Yeah.
And Batya, before Michael jumps in, what do you think of the attack on Casey Means and the meaning of that?
I have to say, I have not been following that very closely, so I don't want to weigh in. I'm sort of peripherally aware of it, but have not followed too closely. So I'll punt on that.
Okay. Michael, anything to say about it?
Yeah, just a couple things real quick. I think when we're talking about the Democratic brand, we should be very clear. There are problems, right? Platform, I actually don't know if platform is the problem or where we stand on some of these issues. I mean, I think we need to be tougher on the border, and I think we need to be reach common sense messaging and communicating on things like culture, and then we will be trusted on economic issues after that. But it's also important to remember 5 million less people turned out. Joe Biden is still going to be the president who received the most votes in history, and even with how bad Harris performed, and I think she performed, I think the autopsy on what occurred in 24 is very, very simple. There were 7 swing states. In 6 of those 7 swing states, voters chose Donald Trump and they chose a Democrat for governor of North Carolina, for a senator in Wisconsin, for a senator in Michigan, for a senator in Arizona, and for a senator in Nevada. Our problem is not as vast as we think. We did have a problem with the messenger at the top of the ticket, and that was very clear. But voters did not push the Democratic Party away. Again, 6 out of those 7 swing states. And look, the #1 ad that ran in Pennsylvania that probably doomed Bob Casey the most was the trans ad, a cultural ad. Had nothing to do with the economy. And I just don't believe that voters are really as nuanced and focused on economic issues outside of their own wallet. But I think culturally, we have to get to a better place.
Can I just ask, so do you not think it was really like economic?
No,
just to clarify.
No, I don't. I don't.
You don't think that the economy?
First of all, the first bullet point on James Carville's famous whiteboard was not, it's the economy, stupid. It's change versus more of the same. Economy was second.
Michael, what was the third thing on the sign?
Don't forget about healthcare.
There you go. Nicely done.
But in 2004, the economy was at, we were at Ohio, the state of Ohio had record high unemployment rate. What did the people of Ohio care about more? Gay marriage ban or their economy? It was very clear what they cared about more. In 2022, the midterms, under Biden, we still had a 40-year record high inflation. But that's not what motivated people. What motivated people was the Supreme Court taking their rights away. I think when we get to a place where Democrats can be seen as culturally common sense, I think people will trust us more on economic issues. But I don't think the economy, I think messenger matters way more than message in our business.
An interesting take. Do you have a take, though, on the Callie and Casey means that?
No, because I'm sorry, I'm not following it that much. I apologize.
All right. Callie, I find it a little baffling. I'm following it quite closely. I think that the opposition is not that big, but it's some of the loudest voices on the national town square, particularly Laura Loomer. Yeah. And so her track record of taking people out is quite good. So it's a strange situation. I think if you polled it, most Americans would have no idea it's going on. And I think that outside the few visible opponents, most of the energy and the visible voices in MAGA are very much for her. And I think the president probably shouldn't have said he barely knew her and it was all Bobby Kennedy's idea. But I think it's explained by the idiosyncratic point of view of a few people, and she does have a history of saying things and supporting things that are not, wouldn't pass muster with MAGA. But the vice president said horrible things about the president in 2016, and yet somehow he's the vice president. So, Callie, what would you like Washington to do?
Can I just deliver a message to Laura Loomer then? So if you're listening, I have an 8-year-old child, 2nd grade, struggling with, they say the ADHD and there's all these food additives and everything. And we're going through it all. And I don't know if Laura Loomer's a mom or not, or feeds her nieces and nephews, but just try to look at it from a parent's perspective. And to Washington, let's put the health of the future first, right? Like, I get it, big pharma, big ag, all these places. But if we don't have a healthy future, we don't have any of those.
Amen, sister.
Brilliant. You speak for tens of millions. Thank you for coming on. Love having you here. I've got an 8-year-old too who's headed to.
So
he's headed to Carnegie Hall, and he knows my favorite joke.
What is it?
How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
I don't know.
Practice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Callie, thank you for coming on. Grateful to you. All right, I'm going to show you something, and then we'll bring somebody else in, and maybe some of you have seen this, but it just came across my feed during the program. So much interest in Chicago and really in the country about the Pope being from Chicago, right? Like people are just obsessed with like he's an American and let's see him in American situations. This is the Pope 20 years ago at the game ninth inning of a World Series White Sox game in 2005. Don't play it till you blow it up full there.
They're 2 strikes away from a win here in 2005 in Game 1 with Jenks on the mound and Everett at the plate.
It's just awesome. I mean, some of you may think, who cares? But if you're a baseball fan or just a fan of like history, it's kind of awesome. Batya, how are you feeling about the Pope?
I was feeling really good about it until somebody pointed out that he spoke 3 languages during his speech, but he did not speak in English. And then I felt a bit soured. But I mean, the whole thing was very moving, and it's very cool that he's American. Like, I can't help but feel really proud of that somehow. But then that did make me think, like, why didn't he speak in English? Do you have a theory about that?
Yeah, I mean, based on the way he's lived his life of late, maybe he's used English less. I don't know. It's a good question, though. I had the same reaction. He certainly talks English, regularly. Michael LaRosa, you're Catholic, I assume.
No, my dad, my Italian side is, and I did go to a Catholic college, but I'm not particularly.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I saw a video today, though, Mark, similar that was found on Twitter. What was his connection to Villanova University? Because
he went to Villanova.
So Jill Biden gave an address there when she got her advanced degree, and he was sitting right behind her. And somebody put the video up today.
Ooh, I haven't seen that. That's a good one.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was cool to see.
Awesome. All right, bring more folks in as always. Tell us where you are, what's on your mind. Peter, first explain your last name because I'm sorry I got it wrong. What is your last name, Peter?
It's pronounced Chot, like rhyming with Scott, like CHOT.
And what derivation of name is that?
It's Hungarian if you go far back enough, but my dad's parents came over from Poland.
Got it. And is that how they spell it in Eastern Europe?
Yes. It used to have a Y on the end, apparently, I'm told, far back enough in our family history, but which is a common Hungarian thing, but that vanished in the mid-19th century.
Got it. And where do you live? Where do you live now, Peter?
I live in Berkeley, California.
Okay. Let's just game this out with me for a little bit. Say you're ordering a pizza in the old-fashioned, back when you had to call. Hello, yes, you want to place a carryout order? Tell me your name, please.
I just spell it. I just say how it's pronounced. I say how I pronounce it, and then I just spell it.
Go ahead and spell it for me.
CIOTH.
All right. It's a short name, but I know you've been dealing with this your whole life, and I rarely make an issue with things, but I sort of feel bad because I would not have gotten.
No, don't feel bad. Nobody gets it right on the first try.
I wouldn't have gotten on my first 10 tries, Peter. That's my point. Anyway,
no one does.
Welcome in. Thank you for joining. What's on your mind?
So it's interesting. Well, first of all, I have a short question for you, Mark, and it's like, where do you keep getting Michael Bennet's name as a presidential candidate from? So to give you some background on me, I was very involved in Democratic politics in my youth, about a decade plus ago. What kind of stuff did you do? So in college, I was first an intern on the Obama 2012 campaign, and then I was a field organizer in Iowa. So congratulations on your victory. Yes, my county was the only county in eastern Iowa that Obama lost, but by 23 votes. What's the biggest town or city in Delaware County? Manchester. 1,700 people, I think. Was the population of it.
Delaware County.
Yeah. Were you in charge of Delaware County?
I was in charge of Delaware County and then half of another county that we did win. So
did he win Delaware County in 2008? He probably did.
Probably did, yeah. And then that county and all of the counties around it went huge for Trump, starting in 2016 and then continuing in 2020 and 2024. It was very fascinating.
It's very hard to lose to a Mormon in an Iowa county, just so you know. So, very hard.
That's true. Yeah. Although McCain probably lost them by more, like you said.
Yeah. All right. So you did that, and then what'd you do? I know you were getting to your saying you think Michael Bennett's a zero.
I did something completely different for my for my career. I've had a long life journey since then. No longer a member of the Democratic Party, to put it mildly. I'd say I'm a registered independent, but
what issues drove you from the party?
There were a lot of things. I had like a personal religious conversion journey. COVID was a big thing. I'm very aligned with RFK Jr. and the Maha movement. And then I think what it really started was actually foreign policy in some respects, even before some of that stuff happened. I was very, anti-war, and seeing, during Trump's first term, for the first part of it, I was not pro-Trump at all. But one of the things that I didn't understand was the whole Russiagate stuff. I was suspicious of it from day one. And I saw it and I followed people who were at the time considered to be on the left, and now I don't know what they're considered. People like Matt Taibbi, like Glenn Greenwald. These were people who I read and really respected, and I sort of agreed with and they were not pro-Trump at all, but they didn't understand, or they were very critical of how this was the sort of Russiagate stuff was being used to attempt to basically to criminalize having a different view on how we should do policies in Eastern Europe, to put it simply, I guess.
Are you a supporter of Donald Trump today?
I am now. I did not. So 2016, I voted Democrat. 2020, I voted third party. And 2024, I did vote for Trump. Yes.
One of the most valuable things I think Two-Way has done is to give voices like Peter a wider audience, because you couldn't be a thoughtful Democrat and listen to Peter's briefly recounting why he left the party and why he's now a supporter for Trump, and say this is a racist or a dumb person or a reactionary or someone who has kind of willy-nilly whatever. This is a very thoughtful litany of the reasons why you've left the Democratic Party and now you're a supporter of Donald Trump, having been an Obama organizer, just a decade and a half, less than a decade.
My mom was in the administration.
Yeah. So again, I appreciate you telling this story, and I just say to Democrats who are watching, don't be angry at Peter. Don't dismiss Peter's story, because if you want your party to come back, you lost a guy who moved to Iowa to try to help Barack Obama get elected president 13 years ago. You lost that, and clearly a very smart and thoughtful person. So ask yourself, how could that have happened? Just like ask yourself, Peter said he's a supporter of Bobby Kennedy. This is my new big exception. If you're a Democrat and you can't explain why Bobby Kennedy, a Kennedy, left your party, you're not being thoughtful about what's wrong. Exactly. Michael, hold on, Peter, 1 second. Michael, then Batya, then back to Peter, please.
But we also need to be clear. What Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard are in the Democratic Party are what Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are to the Republican Party. They're more gadflies in a corner of the party. Bobby Kennedy has always been that. And look, I think the president.
But Michael, he ran to be your nominee.
Obama almost made him EPA administrator. He was considered to be appointed to Hillary's Senate seat. Tulsi was vice chair of the DNC.
Thank you.
I would say this. I think Trump has Bobby Kennedy there. I think he loves the coalition that the Maha movement brings, and I think they plan to capitalize on his movement to try to mitigate some of those losses in the midterms as best as they can. In the end, I don't know if he will have much sway or influence in enacting anything he wants to do. I think I think Trump likes name brands, and a lot of those companies who RFK is going after are iconic American brands. And I think he probably won't be around longer than probably till after the midterms. But I guess I don't understand the offensiveness to, like, what offended you about the Democratic Party, because there's a lot of things that offend me too. Russiagate, look, it was sort of extraneous.
That was a seed. It's become much more than that for a number of reasons. But that was sort of the thing that got me sort of asking questions, I guess you could say.
About?
Just about, how has this, I think the Democratic Party has now become, and again, it's bigger than just this now, but I think that since the rise of Trump in 2015, 16, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of neoconservatives and hawks still in the Republican Party, for sure. And I hope that they are phased out in the years to come. But I think that the Democratic Party has become the war party, at least more so than the Republican Party now. Trump was the first president in decades to not have a new war.
I think you're right. I don't know if it's so much that the Democrats have changed, though. I think it's because the Republicans have. Republicans would have
I think
been
it's both, actually. I think it's both.
Well,
Michael, hold on 1 second. Sorry, I want to get Batya in, and Batya, you can either comment on the conversation, or if you want to ask Peter questions, I bet you probably have some. Please be my guest.
Well, I came from a very similar place. Like my politics have always been like, anti-war, pro-worker, and, socially moderate. And that used to be the Democrats' platform for 100 years, and now it's Trump's. So the Democrats used to be like, like pro-gay. They wanted abortions to be safe, legal, and rare. Now they're pro-trans, which in many cases is actually anti-gay, and they want abortions to be legal into the ninth month, third trimester. And it's Trump who says, abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, basically, and who has appointed the highest-ranking out gay person in American history, Scott Bessent. The Democrats used to be anti-war. Now they are the ones pushing, or were pushing, for like new entanglements, new wars, the support of the war in Ukraine, endlessly, forever, finding new enemies anywhere they could, especially if they were people who they thought Trump liked. And it's Donald Trump who's anti-war, who has outflanked them to the left on being anti-war. And it used to be the Democrats who were pro-labor, and now it's the Democrats who are pro-China, pro-corporation. As I said, in 5 minutes, you're going to see them defending tax cuts for the rich. And it's Donald Trump who's implementing, a tight labor market, which is what controlling the border is all about, puts wages in working class people's pockets, tariffs, puts wages in working class people's pockets, and, is trying to do, anything that he has for the business community is an attempt to basically reshore manufacturing and encourage people to, he's basically, this is like, people don't get this, but what he's doing is unbelievably radical. He is instituting an industrial policy, but industry is paying for it. It is the most unbelievably radical proposition I've ever heard. Like, he is instituting an industrial policy for the United States, but rather than having the taxpayer pay for it the way it's done in every communist and socialist country, industry is paying for it. So we have $2 trillion at this point committed to reshoring manufacturing by corporations. Yeah. So to me, that's like, he basically outflanked the Democrats to the left on every issue that we care about, except the social ones where they went completely insane and abandoned their own constituencies, like Black Americans and gay Americans and women, right? I'm so where you're at, Peter, and I'm so glad. But also, by the way, this is my question for you. Mm-hmm. The Republicans can lose me if they I cannot stress this enough, and tell me if you agree. If their nominee in 2028 is J.D. Vance, and he comes out and says, I'm a Catholic and a national abortion ban is very important to me, which is something he has said before, people like you and me, I don't know, you tell me if people like me will have to think twice, because like there is a way in which like Trump took abortion off the table.
So I don't think he's going to do that. So I'll say, actually, on social issues, I'm probably to the right of Trump now. I had a religious conversion experience a few years ago. I converted to Orthodox Christianity. I was raised my father's a lapsed Catholic. My mother's Reformed Jewish, but I converted to Orthodox Christianity a few years ago. But I'm also realistic in the sense that I don't think it's, even from that perspective, I agree with something that Vice President Vance said in the debate, which I thought was very wise, where he said, we need to, basically he said something when the abortion issue came up, is that we need to change we need to get the trust of the people back and change like hearts and minds on it. And I thought that was very wise. So I don't think that there's been no talk of doing that during, this administration. I don't think, barring some shift in popular opinion, which, I personally would like to see, but is probably not likely in the next 4 years. I don't think that J.D. Vance will push that. And I do agree with what Batya said, that the Democratic Party has, there used to be a home for actually even pro-life people in the Democratic Party, even 20 years ago.
Yes,
and that's
sir.
not the case anymore.
Yep. Peter, I know we haven't let you ask your question, and we're running up against the time. So I'm going to say real quick, I'm told the Pope did his mass in English today. So wow. He did talk English today. So Peter, real quick, and again, I'd love for you to come back and we'll talk to you forever, but ask whatever it is you wanted to ask.
Yes, and one of these days I'll force myself to get up early enough West Coast time to be on morning meeting. I'll just keep it, quick one for you, Mark, and then for Michael. where do you keep getting Michael Bennet as a possible president? Like someone who could actually get elected president. I've been in rooms with Michael Bennet in my former life. The guy is so boring. I'm sorry. He's just really boring.
Yeah. Well, let's see if he can get elected governor of Colorado. Okay, which I think he will.
Probably, yeah.
I've known him a long time. Our fathers were friends for 4 or 5 decades. And I just believe that it is often the case that the country elects as a new president someone who is the closest to the opposite of the incumbent. And I believe that he boring could be a virtue in 2028 if boring is seen as solid.
I don't think straight white male is a virtue to the Democratic 2028 primary voters.
Well, we'll see. But I've covered a lot of campaigns, and I see in him someone who could win. James Carville, by the way, same thing, and he's got a pretty good track record of picking. So I may be wrong, but I would take Michael in the top 3 of likelihood because he's run before and he's a brilliant guy, and boring could be a virtue. And the reality is he's a very funny guy. He doesn't show it often in public, but he is a very funny guy. Michael, question for Michael.
I feel like it's so interesting hearing you talk about how the cultural issues were the most important in 2024. I actually agree to a certain extent. And I feel like that's almost worse for the Democratic Party because, look, I agree with what Batya said about the tariffs, but I could be wrong. And I think if it's possible that the Republicans and Trump could mismanage the economy the next 4 years, if the economy is so important, then that almost gives the Democrats more of a chance to get back. Whereas I think that the Democrats are now, what we're seeing, since the inauguration especially, is that the Democrats are irrevocably, with some exceptions who are individuals, but as a party, I think they're irrevocably committed to the far left position on these cultural issues. I mean, Seth Moulton, who is, yeah, he's moderate, but he's really not, from what he could get primaried for what he said about, girls and
it's incredible.
Trans in sports. It could genuinely happen.
Yeah, it's incredible. Michael, briefly, if you could.
Yeah, I do. I think we need to get to a place where we can have common sense views on these things. I'm a former NCAA athlete. The answer is still no. I don't believe that women or men should be playing in women's sports. I think most of my teammates, most people in the NCAA feel the same way. Democrats need to get to a place where they're comfortable saying those things, where they're comfortable saying, no, we should not have people who've committed crimes in this country who have also crossed the border illegally. We are fine with deporting those people. We need to be able to say that. We need to be able to say it's not okay to have taxpayer-funded, American tax-funded drag shows or DEI programs in Serbia or Ecuador, that these are okay things to cut from the federal budget. That Bill Clinton cut 12%, 350,000 federal workers, and we all rallied around him at the time. And I think we are not, every time Trump has now boxed us into defending really unpopular institutions, whether it's the media or higher ed or the bureaucracy or the immigration system. And we're now, all of these frontliners, all of these new candidates are going to have to defend all of these positions. And where I disagree with Batya about a national message, I don't want a national message or a national messenger right now. I want each district, I want our candidates, exactly what Rahm Emanuel did in 2006. You find the people that represent your district, that can talk and speak to that district. That's how we win back power. And it's going to be in places that are red or purple, and where AOC or Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump will not work in Allentown, Pennsylvania, or Traverse City, Michigan, or Jacksonville, Florida.
Michael, what do you want the power for? Like, what do you want to do with the power? Let's say you get the power. What do you want to do with it? That's what's not clear to me from the Democrats. What do they want it for?
I will leave it up to the policy experts to figure out how to govern, but we can't govern until we win, right? Oh, sure. Do I have lots of opinions? Yeah, I have lots of opinions about policy, but what's the point in having opinions on policy if we can't get our house in order and we can't win elections?
But how can you win without telling people what you're going to do for them? Like, that's what I feel like I don't really understand.
I mean, but like, here's the reality. Like, this is just crass politics. And this is just what I believe. Like in 2005 and 2006, when we were shut out of all powers of government, it wasn't like there was a national leader who brought us out of the ditch or a national message. It was
national
events.
climate did, though.
No, events.
Iraq, Katrina.
It was Terry Schiavo. It was inefficiency of government and Katrina. It was the corruption of Tom DeLay and a lot of Republican leaders that changed the climate. In the end, we have 4 seats we need to pick up. Okay, 4. Events are going to motivate voters more than any one message, because all of these districts are completely different and responsive to different kinds of messages. But it's not going to be one economic platform. It's going to be national events that motivate voters. And that's just always been the case, as it was in 2022.
That's true. I do think, to make a quick macro point, though, about 26. And, I know that the Republicans are saying, like, oh, if we lose in 26, it's all, they're saying all the the scaremongering things to their own side about what might happen in 2026. But I think unless there are things that change in overall trends or due to black swan events or whatever else, I think the Democrats could win at least the House in 2026. And I don't think it'll matter that much for the overall trends. It didn't matter that much. The Democrats won big in 1982. They were still overall largely shut out of power for over a decade. And I think that that's where this current Democratic Party is. I think they're where they were after Carter.
But look what they did in 1986 when we won back 26 seats in 82 with Congressman Tony
Right,
Coelho.
but then Reagan won 49 states, is my point. And then Bush won again in 88.
But look what we did after he won re-election, before Democrats took back the Senate in 86. We passed tax reform. We passed, actually, immigration reform. And we're still living under it. Simpson-Marzulli.
Peter, we really want you to come back. Are you the Peter who predicts award show winners?
Oh my gosh, I used to do that so long ago. Oh my gosh.
that was you, right? But you gave it up. Man. You gave it up.
Oh yeah, I gave that up a long time ago. Wow.
Yeah. Peter used to have a thriving public-facing voice in which he would predict who would win, like the Oscars. And what'd you do besides the Oscars?
I'm more embarrassed about that than having been a Democrat.
You did the Oscars. You did the Emmys. What else did you do?
Oh no.
Were you good at it?
I think I was okay. I honestly don't. I blocked that out of my mind so much. I don't even remember.
Everybody go to awardswatch.com.
No, please don't.
Awardswatch.com. It's an incredible resource for history. Peter, extremely grateful with you. And again, really do come back and just go to bed early Sunday night and join us in the morning meeting.
I'll do my best.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Michael, Batya, very grateful to you all both always for coming on. Batya, I apologize for interrupting. But again, I just consider it conversation, not interrupting. But I apologize. Thank you all for watching. Again, go watch my latest episode of Next Up on YouTube, or you can listen to it as a podcast. Batya and I talked about the Biden thing, so you can watch more of our discussion there. Interview with the Department of Veterans of the Department Secretary, Doug Collins, about all sorts of things. And my opening monologue is about the questions the Democratic Party is not answering that many Democrats, or at least some Democrats, think they should. As Peter would say, Bennett 2028. Thank you all for watching. Sean Dan and I will be back Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll have the debut of the People's Poll. We just are about to get the poll back out of the field, and many of you submitted questions. So join us Monday for the unveiling of a 1,000-person national poll with a lot of really interesting questions and results. Have a great weekend, everybody.